And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey folks, today we're taking a look at Innovation. This is Innovation by Asmati Games. This is the original box. The current box is much thinner than this. And this is Innovation by IELLO Games. This was currently the North American version of the game that was in English that you could buy other places, but now you can get it in America. They are the exact same game, with the only difference being the graphical difference in this. But I thought it'd be a good chance, if you've never seen Innovation before, and you should because it's a great game, here's a chance for me to show you the game and talk about it a little bit. Let's do it. In the middle of the table, you're going to put stacks of cards corresponding to each age. You start with the first age and go around all the way till you get to the digital age. You just put them in a circle, or in the case of someone like me, the best that you can do. In the middle of the table, one of each card is placed there, and that stands for a card that will show that you dominate that age. And then over here are some more dominations that you can get as the game progresses. Now, players are going to start with two of these cards in their hand, and you're going to play one at the beginning of the game. And these cards are really the heart of the whole game, as well as a board that you have here. When you play a card, that card will go face up in front of you. There are 5 different colors of cards, and you can only have one of each color in front of you. So if I have the wheel here, for example, and then I play clothing, it goes on top of the wheel, and domestication, I would play next to it. So you can have up to 5 cards in front of you. During the course of the game, you will also get influence. When you get influence, you'll take a card and you'll place it underneath your board like this, and then players can see how much influence you have. Your influence will grow as the numbers of cards you put under there. I have 1 influence, but if later on I put a 5 under here, now I have 6 influence. One player goes first, and that player gets 2 actions, and you just go around the table until somebody wins the game. The actions that you have are drawing. You can draw a card from whatever deck you have in front of you. You'll have different cards that you'll have played in front of you. So if 1 is the highest card I have in face up in front of me, then 1 is the highest deck I can draw from. If I get a 2 or a 3 out somehow, then I can start drawing from those piles. If the 1 deck is gone, then I can draw 2s. If the 2 deck is gone, I can draw 3s. So you always can draw from the deck that matches the highest number you have in front of you, unless it's gone, in which case you can go to the next highest, etc. Another thing you can do is you can dominate an age. If your influence here equals 5 times the lowest age out here, so let's say age 1, I'm trying to dominate the first age, I need to have 5 influence. If I do so, I simply take this, stick it over here, and I've dominated that age. You also have to have at least 1 card that's at least as high as that age out on the table for that to happen. These other domination ones are much harder to pull off. This one says as soon as 5 of your active cards have a value of 8 or more. Well, that's very difficult, but if you pull it off, these you can take immediately, and they also count for a domination. The first person to get a certain number of dominations, 4, 5, or 6, in a 4, 3, or 2-player game, can win the game that way. But the main point of the game is utilizing a card in front of you. So let's stick a couple cards down here and show how they work and how you would use a card. When you activate a card, you do everything on that card from top to bottom. So in this instance, it says you may put into play any number of cards that provide that castle from your hand. If you put into play 4 or more cards, dominate the technology domain. So that's an alternate way. There are cards that give you alternate ways to dominate those domains, and this is one of those. Each card has a specific alternate way to get it. So I can do this one here, or maybe I would choose something even more similar, like this one here. Sailing says draw and put into play a 1, which is good because normally drawing is an action and putting a card into play is an action. This allows me to draw and put into play a 1. You'll notice that each of these cards has icons around the sides of it. This one here gives 3 castles, and it also shows what age it is. This one here gives a tree, which stands for environment, and then 2 crowns, which stands for financial. The number of these icons is very important. Let's take this sailing, for example. This says draw and put into play a 1. So I can do that. But before I do, because the symbol in front of this is the crown, every other player who has at least as many crowns as I do can also take this action. So they can also draw and put into play a 1. If they do so, then I get a free draw for them doing that. But that is something that you have to keep into account. So you look at all the different icons you have in front of you. More importantly are when the card says I demand. Those affect other players. If you have 4 castles or more, you transfer an active card that provides castles to my zone. If you do, draw 1. So when I play this card, this affects every other player in the game as long as they have, and since it's crowns, fewer crowns than I do. But the different abilities that are in the game, different things will provide them. For example, here I draw 2 number 1s. Anybody who has at least as many of these castles as I do will be able to do that. This is an important feature of the game, and as the game goes by, there's a special ability in this game that lets you splay cards. You can splay cards to the left, you can splay cards to the right, or splay cards up. When you splay cards, you'll simply do this, or up. And you can see that when you splay cards, you will have many more icons available to you. It doesn't give you the special abilities of the cards underneath, but it does give you more icons that you'll be able to work with. So splaying cards is a very unique aspect to this game. Now the cards get better and better as they go up. Let's take a look here at, here's an example of a level 5 card. Draw and reveal a 6. If it's green or blue, put it into play and repeat this dogma. Otherwise, add it to your hand. If all your active non-purple cards are value 6 or more, dominate the science domain. There's another one of those domination things. But you can see as the cards, sometimes they have multiple things. I can draw an archive of 5. Archive means stick it on the bottom of my deck. And if my deck's already splayed, that will give me more icons. This lets me then splay my red cards right. And then you can score one of your active cards. That's where I stick it underneath influence and get the influence points for it. If you do, also score the card beneath it. And as the game progresses, the cards will get super powerful. I mean, the 10s are very powerful. Activate the cooperative dogmas of another of your active cards for yourself only. If you have more dominations than any other player, you win. And this is another feature of the game. There are a lot of cards in the game. They're all in the 8, 9, and 10 eras that have alternate victory conditions. For example, here, you will draw and score 10, and if robotics and software are both active cards in any zone, the single player with the lowest influence wins. So that's a very different thing. Or the opposite here, draw and score 6. If there's no player with more environment than factories, the single player with the most influence points wins. Or if, here in bioengineering, if a player has fewer than 3 of the trees icons, the single player with the most trees wins. So there's several of these involved in the game. Also, if for some reason at any point in time a player needs to draw a 10 and there is no 10s, then whoever has most influence wins. Has nothing to do with how many of the eras you dominated. So multiple ways to win. Get the number of dominations that you need to win. That happens a good chunk of the time. One of these weird alternate victory conditions that are in some of these cards. Or if the game ends with the card decks running out, whoever has the most influence wins. So that's kind of a quick way to talk about playing Innovation. There are other cards involved and different abilities, but you learn those as you go along and play. Real quick, here's a comparison of the cards from the original Innovation and the new one. And the original one, very clean-cut, useful cards. Cannot argue about that. The new one is not quite so clean looking, but it just looks better, in my opinion. It's still very easy to see the symbols on the new ones. And then, I mean, the backside, it's not even a question which one looks nicer. You know, these just have a really nice look to them. The old reference board was a wall of text. The new one has a lot of text, but it's edited in a nicer way, and also is a board. In my opinion, clearly a superior one graphically, but there are some people who prefer the older version. Alright, like I said, I loved Innovation. I really love it with the expansion, and the expansion's coming out for this one too, so that's great. Or it's already out, actually. But I love it with the expansion, but come on, for me, which one do I want on my shelf? Beautiful or dull? Goodbye, dull. Beautiful. But let's talk about Innovation as a game itself. Innovation is a very chaotic, crazy game. When I first played it, my gaming group was divided. There are people who hate it and they'll never touch it, and there are people who love it. But almost everybody who plays it, even though the game says 2 to 4 players on it, most people agree that 4 players is pretty bad. 3 players is okay. It's good, but 2 players is great. It's a great 2-player game. But it's super chaotic. I do this, attack you, bring this back. There's cars blown up all over the place, but it's fun. Now, it's double fun with the expansion, really. But even without the expansion, just the whole idea of Civilization boiled down to these cards and the different things you can do with cards, and trying to think, okay, which card am I going to play for my hand? What age am I going to go for? What are my 2 actions? But these actions don't take that long, so I go boom, 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 and you go, but I'm watching what you do. I'm trying to match you, trying to have as many icons of the same thing as you. There's a lot of entertainment value here. At the same time, seemingly distilling Civilization itself to a game. So I like it. There's a good quality box. It's those magnetic boxes I like where it snaps on, holds it in. The artwork is really well done. Beautiful, I think. And it plays, once you know what you're doing, we're talking 45 minutes a game or so with 2 players. Once you get to 3 players, it's a little longer, an hour or so, but it feels very involved. It feels like a deeper game. Innovation, once I added the expansion in, had hit my top 100 last year, and I think it'll still be there. I still get a chance to teach it, and many times when I teach it without the expansion, and I still enjoy it a lot that way. I mean, granted, there's those times where you draw the right card at the right time, and your opponent just got that edge that it's hard for me to come back from, but still, a great game, Innovation.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.
Shut the door.